All right, class. So again, we are looking at a sarcomere, and these are the Z discs. Okay, this is the M line. This is the A band with both thick and thin filaments. This is the I band with only thin filaments. We also see some titin proteins here. And this is the H zone that has only thick filaments. And these are the titin proteins. Okay, so when a sarcomere shortens or narrows when the thick and the thin filaments slide past each other. Can you imagine the thick and the thin filaments sliding past each other, thereby bringing the Z discs closer to the M line? Can you imagine that? Okay. And when that happens, when the thick and thin filaments slide past each other, pulling the Z discs closer to the M line, that results in shortening of the sarcomere. So the sliding filament theory states that muscles contract due to interaction or sliding of thick and thin filaments in each sarcomere. And as a result of this, we have a change in the length of the sarcomere, and which ultimately results in shortening or contraction of the entire muscle. Okay, so right here, we will look at a relaxed sarcomere. So this is a relaxed one, and this is a contracted sarcomere. So what do we see? As the sarcomere is contracted, few things that we notice. We notice that the Z discs move closer to each other. They move closer to the M line. And that's why the sarcomere is shortened in length, or it narrows in length, right? As the Z discs come closer and the thick and thin filaments slide past each other, what do you notice about the H zone? If you notice at the bottom picture here, do you really see an H zone with thick filaments only? You don't. So when a sarcomere is contracted, the H zone narrows and disappears. Okay, if you look at the length of the sarcomere, has it narrowed? Yes. So when a sarcomere is contracted, it narrows in length. Okay. Now, let's talk about the I band. In the contracted sarcomere at the bottom, do you see, just look at the sarcomere from here to here. We are focusing on this part. Do you see an I band with thin filaments only? No. So when you look at a contracted sarcomere, the I bands narrow and disappears. Now, in the process, do you think that the length of the thick and thin filaments have changed? The answer is no. The length of thick and thin filaments never change. They just slide past each other. And last but the most important thing, remember the width of the A band. The width of the A band, which is from here to here. The width of the A band never changes. It remains constant. Okay? So So the width of the A band never changes. See, the width remains the same. All right, hopefully that was clear. Moving on. Now, the question is, you will ask me, Rupa, so we understand the detailed anatomy of the muscle. And we also understand that by sliding of the thick and thin filaments within each sarcomere, we get the ultimate muscle contraction. We understand this, but Rupa, what actually causes the muscles to contract? Is there a stimuli? Yes, there is stimulus. So we will now talk about motor units, and we will see how motor units cause muscle contractions. We will focus on the picture on the right hand side first. And on the right hand side, you do see a cross section of the spinal cord. You should know this from anatomy. If you look into the spinal cord, you see the central darker gray colored butterfly shaped structure, and that's a gray matter. Now if you look into the anterior horn, which is this part of the spinal cord, from the anterior horn we have actually the anterior horn houses cell bodies of two neurons, right? We have a pink and a purple one. And these neurons whose cell bodies lie in the anterior horn of the spinal cord, these neurons, if you notice, they come all the way and they innervate muscle fibers. Do you see? They innervate each cigarette-like structures. Okay, don't think about the cigarette, sorry. So these neurons, they are called motor neurons. They are called motor neurons because they bring a motor command from the spinal cord to specific muscle fibers. Okay, so the motor neuron will carry an action potential or simply an electrical current to the muscle fibers, telling it to contract. Alright, so we will look at the entire mechanism. But then what's a motor unit? Now I want you to focus on the purple motor neuron. Look at the purple motor neuron that originates from the spinal cord. And if you look at the purple motor neuron, you see it has a long axon that comes and terminates in specific muscle fibers. It terminates on this muscle fiber and this muscle fiber. Now I want you to look at the pink motor neuron, which also originates in the spinal cord, has a long axon, and the pink motor neuron terminates in this muscle fiber, and this muscle fiber. Right? Okay. Now, so the purple motor neuron innervates two muscle fibers, this one and this one. And together that forms a motor unit. So a motor unit consists of a single motor neuron and the muscle fibers it controls. So the first one we looked at, we have one motor neuron controlling two muscle fibers, and that forms our motor unit number 1. The second motor neuron controls 3 muscle fibers, these 3, and that motor neuron and the 3 muscle fibers it controls together forms a second motor unit. Form the second motor unit. Okay? You can also think of it as lecture. So in lecture, let's say I am talking to just one group of students. Let's say I'm talking to only 4 students. Okay? So I am a motor neuron and I'm controlling only 4 of you. And me and you guys, if I compare you to a muscle fiber, so I am a motor neuron, you are a muscle fiber. A motor neuron controlling 4 muscle fibers forms a motor neuron controlling 4 muscle fibers form a motor unit. Make sense? Okay. Now the size of motor units can vary. A motor neuron can control, only few muscle fibers to hundreds of muscle fibers. So the size of motor units can vary. And know that within each muscle, there are many motor units. And they work following all or none principle. What does that mean? That means Let's take motor unit number 1 as an example. We know that motor unit number 1 has a motor neuron that innervates only 2 muscle fibers. Now, if the motor neuron shoots out an action potential, the action potential will reach the 2 muscle fibers and the muscle fibers will contract. Now, there is nothing called soft contraction or fast contraction or slow contraction. There is nothing like that. If there is an action potential going to the muscle fibers, the fibers will contract. That's it. There is nothing called slow contraction or fast contraction. No. If there is an action potential, there will be contraction of the muscle fiber. The end. That follows all or none principle. Okay. Moving on to fine control versus force. So we do know that each muscle has multiple motor units. Now let's say you are picking up a paper you're just picking up a paper, right? And you want to write something on it. Now if you are picking up a piece of paper, you do need a little bit of force, right? But it's not a lot of force that you need to apply. So in order to do that, you can only recruit few motor units because you are not generating a lot of force. Therefore, you don't need to recruit all the motor units present in the muscle. So you need to generate little force. You recruit only few motor units. However, let's say you are traveling and you are at LAX. Really bad example under these situations, but you are lifting up a heavy suitcase. Do you need to generate a lot of force? Yes, you do. And then you will recruit as many motor units as you can in the muscle, right? So when you are generating a lot of force, you recruit more motor units because you need a greater contraction. Therefore, how many motor units are recruited correlates with whether we are looking at fine control versus force. Okay, for fine control or for less force, we recruit lesser number of motor units, but for actions that require a lot of force, we recruit a large number of motor units. Okay. That leads to our next segment, and this is called neuromuscular junction. So here in this picture, we see a motor neuron, and this particular motor neuron is controlling 3 muscle fibers. Remember, the junction between the motor neuron and the muscle fiber is called neuromuscular junction, popularly known as NMJ. So a motor neuron, the region where a motor neuron comes in very close proximity to a muscle fiber, we call that neuromuscular junction. More to be continued in the next segment or in the next video. I'll stop here.